Many people believe that the hardest part of starting or growing a business is coming up with the right idea, finding customers, or raising capital. But according to today's guest, the most difficult challenge entrepreneurs face may be something far more personal, becoming the leader their company needs them to be. Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to The Reluctant Entrepreneur. As a business grows, the demands on the founder grow with it. Decisions become more complex, teams get larger, the stakes get higher, and the skills that help someone start the business are often not the same skills required to lead it at scale. My guest today, Andrew Poles, has spent more than 2 decades working with entrepreneurs and executives who are navigating exactly that challenge. As an executive coach and multi-time founder, Andrew focuses on helping leaders grow into the role their companies demand of them. He's worked with thousands of founders and executives to help them manage the pressures of leadership, build stronger teams, and scale their businesses without sacrificing their health, their relationships, or their sanity. Today, we're going to talk about the leadership gap many founders encounter, the pressures that come with scaling a business, and why growing yourself may be the most important part of growing your company. And it all begins right now. Stick around. Andrew Poles, welcome to the program. I'm so glad you're my guest today. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Mike. I've been looking forward to this for weeks. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it has been several weeks lining this up, so I'm glad you stuck with me. So many of the guests on my show never set out to be entrepreneurs. Your story may or may not be different. I'd love to start with your story. What were you doing professionally before entrepreneurship entered into the picture? And how did that path lead you towards starting your own business?
Yeah, so my path is a big circle. It starts with me being a reluctant entrepreneur, actually. So I started off my career pursuing a PhD in philosophy with the intention of writing, speaking, and doing something with my life that made a real difference in the quality of people's lives. I've always wanted to do that. And then while in graduate school, I got my girlfriend pregnant, and we were kind of breaking up or splitting up at the time this happened. And so I had to confront that I was going to become a father when I had no plans to be a father. And I had to support a child when I had no means of doing that, because in graduate school, I was working 2 jobs and still not able to cover tuition and all of my bills.
You had a lot of philosophical things in front of you, philosophical and reality hitting you all at one time.
Very true. Very true. And then on top of that, there were no jobs in philosophy in Austin, Texas, where I was living, where I am still living. And so I just sort of completely reoriented my whole picture of my future from pursuing my dream of doing something that made a difference to surviving the threat of having to support a family. And what I did was I finished all my coursework and left my program ABD, so everything but my dissertation. And I started a business so that I could take my daughter to work, because I couldn't see how else I was ever going to get to see her in her first couple of years of life. She was going to be breastfeeding. And, if I was working in a job all day that wouldn't let me take her to work, I was just not going to see her. So I started a business because I wanted to be able to see my daughter and to support her. So I kind of abandoned. That is one of the sweetest
reasons for starting, or rationale for starting a business I think I've heard on the show. That is amazing. That's a good dad. You changed your whole trajectory. We hear about this in life. We hear about women, leaving their careers and raising a family and really sacrificing for the family at the expense of their own, current trajectory. Man, you did the same thing. I mean, you were so close to the finish line, and you just kind of stepped out of that race and ran a different race, probably a better race. But still, that's very admirable.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. To be honest, even though it's my story, I never thought of it that way.
Really?
If I'm being fully candid, it took me many years to get beyond relating to that move that I made as anything other than quitting. It felt like quitting.
I'd say
at the same
sacrifice.
Time, it felt like the right thing to do, right? It felt like both. It felt both like the right thing to do, and it felt like quitting because I was so close, as you said, to the finish line, and it was hard to accept. down the road, after I got some distance from it and my life had kind of stabilized financially, it was hard to accept that I was that close and didn't finish. However, that's what I did. And while I was running that business, it was very successful in a couple of respects. I was able to take her to work. So I was really fulfilled that I got to spend incredible quality time with her at a time of life where normally I would not have been able to. And right out of the gate, the company was financially successful in terms of becoming profitable pretty quickly. It wasn't paying myself and my business partner much. So we were living pretty thin, but the business was self-sustaining. However, Mike, what happened was, along that journey, I was really, really struggling in my relationship with her mom. And we tried counseling and I tried therapy myself and nothing really made a difference. And then a friend of mine said, hey, why don't you go try this coaching program I did? I think it'll really make a difference for you. And also reluctantly, after 18 months of him hounding me about this, I finally tried it. And I did that in January of 2021. And so when I did that course, it just completely transformed my whole experience of myself as a man, as a human being. In one conversation, I was able to flip the dynamic of my relationship with her mom, which I was shocked by. And I remembered that I had this dream for my life, that I wanted to do something that made a difference, and my company wasn't set up to do that. So over the next couple of years, I went on my business. I took a job running the business for a competitor, and I jumped into getting myself trained to coach, thinking that made a bigger difference for me than philosophy did. That made a bigger difference for me than therapy did. I'm going to learn how to do for other people what that person just did for me and the other 150 people in the course I was in. And so for the next 17 years, I simultaneously ran other people's businesses and got a great education in how businesses function, while I was getting trained to coach and coaching live. So I coached about 10,000 people in group settings and one-on-one over those 17 years, while running other people's businesses, traveling all over the world, leading programs. And after that 17 years, I decided I was ready to bet on myself again and do some things with my career that I wasn't going to be able to do working for that company. Mm-hmm. And so I left them and I started this business, which I've now had for 6 years. And so now I'm an entrepreneur again. This is my third business. And this time the business is designed around that dream that I had when I was 4. I already knew when I was 4, I want to do something that heals people. And so my business is an executive coaching practice. I coach founders of businesses predominantly who are pre-seed to Series A on the venture track. Some of my founders are also bootstrapped founders of businesses that are kind of moving towards their first couple $1 million of revenue. But all of them are men and women who are building something really meaningful to them, and that's meaningful to the market they serve, and that have a huge commitment to their families, to their partners, and they feel stretched. They feel like they're constantly having to sacrifice something for something else. And that was my story in my first business. You know, as much as I thought this was going to be my way to spend time with my daughter when she was an infant, and it didn't matter how much of my direct attention she was getting, that worked out great. But once she was about 3 or 4, and what she really needed was my attention and taking her with me to work. Yes, she was there, I was there, but she didn't really have me, and I was working 7-day weeks. I was working 80, 90-hour weeks. And it really ultimately took away more than it provided. So this is like that full circle moment where now I know what that feels like, where you constantly feel like you're making a Sophie's choice between your business or your family or your health. And how do you balance all that out? And so that's how I got into entrepreneurship. I do love entrepreneurship, and it wasn't my initial course. You know, it was sort of by necessity. I went that way, or so I believed.
Yeah, so many do. You know, it's long been said, if you want to hear God laugh, just tell him your plans.
Exactly. That's right.
And I've heard him laugh a lot. You've talked about working extremely long hours while scaling one of your businesses, probably one or more of your businesses. Was there a specific moment when you realized that the way you were working just wasn't going to be sustainable? Was there a aha moment, a fall asleep in your soup moment? You know, one of those things?
Yeah, it wasn't that I discovered that it wasn't going to be sustainable. I'm for the first, probably 25 years of my career, I was a really stubborn learner. Like it took me a long time to learn certain lessons. And so it wasn't that there was a moment when I discovered it. What it was that when I launched, so there was a precipitating factor that led to the launching of this current business. And I told you, I left the company I was working for and launched this business. One of the things that was going on, as I mentioned, was that I wanted to do things with my career. I didn't get the opportunity to do coaching for others. But the other thing that was there for me was I told myself the truth that I had always I felt like I needed to attach myself to someone else's brand, because I just didn't believe that, given I didn't finish graduate school and get my PhD, and given this, that, and the other thing, like no one would give me the kind of credibility that I had automatically by being a part of an established brand. And so I said, I'm just not going to live my life inside that fear. I'm going to check this out. I'm going to bet on myself again. And so when I did that, I built the business I have now into a 6-figure business in about 6 weeks, which shocked me how fast I was able to do that. And I was working less than half of what had been working for the first 25 years of my career, or 30 years. And I was making way more money very quickly. And so when I had that experience, what happened for me, Mike, it wasn't that I had this aha moment like, oh, I know how to not grind. It was like, oh my God, I've been grinding. I've been hyper vigilant. I've been volume oriented for so long that it was like water to the fish for me. I couldn't even see that was the only tool in my toolbox. And really what was driving it was fear. There were just some seminal moments in my life, early in life when I was, in single digits, and then later in life they got, reinforced through things that happened in business, where I just took on this belief that unless I am constantly working at every angle I can imagine, at some point the other shoe will drop and something will get me. And that was the fear that drove that strategy. And when I woke up to that, then I really started thinking about whole life design and being more strategic and finding leverage in my business, as opposed to only relying on hard work. And, obviously, as anyone knows who's ever tried to build a business, you don't get around hard work. You just don't get around it. But when it's driven by fear, instead of by, let's just say, your own goal setting or strategies or what you want to achieve, then it consumes you. So I think that was the big shift for me, was away from fear and towards building.
So Andrew, we all experience burnout, whether we're working a day job, regardless of what side of the check we're signing, we all experience burnout. And by the time we're burned out, now, we have to rewind the clock, we have to restore, we have to, heal, all of that. What are the early signs of burnout? How can someone approaching burnout start recognizing the signs? And I ask that because in my experience, I always thought, and particularly in the early days of building my company, that as long as I was incredibly busy with more to do than time would permit, I'm successful, right? I kind of confused the hamster wheel.
Movement with progress.
With progress, yeah, exactly. And there was a certain solace. There was a certain just like grateful feeling, like, look how busy I am. Of course, the money will come because it has to. Look how busy I am. And that, of course, leads to burnout. What are the warning signs that you've maybe been able to look at in retrospect, or that you've seen in other people with all the companies that you've run for other people and the thousands of people you've coached? You must see a particular, maybe repeatable red flag situation that you see it coming before they do. What would that be?
Well, I'll give you a top 3 or 4 indicators that I see, but I'll also make this analogy because I think a lot of people who run companies tend, not all, but many tend to have a background in athletics as well. And I think there's some really useful parallels there for people who've been in athletic sports where the endurance piece of it is important. So they're in an endurance sport like running or cycling or whatever, or they're in a sport like basketball or soccer, where endurance is key. What you find when you are in that kind of a sport is that recovery is such a critical part of the equation, because if you train very, really, really hard and then you don't monitor your recovery, the next day you can't execute your training. And so now you're actually losing ground, and athletes can't afford to lose ground. So they have to learn very quickly how to balance working hard with recovery. It's a little harder to notice this in business. So, but you can look for some of the similar things. So what are those things? One of those things is that aspects of your business that you usually find joyful, enjoyable, or super interesting will start to feel sort of gray, emotionally gray, or even annoying. So when you start to notice that happen, oftentimes that's because you're under recovered or you're beginning to burn out. Not always. It is possible that you had a really bad conversation with someone in your company or your spouse, or something in your personal life, and you're still irritated about that, and it colors everything. But usually when that's the case, that's the case. So when there isn't anything like that and you're beginning to lose joy in the work, that's a good sign. When you're having a hard time focusing the way you normally are used to focusing, for either the amount of time in a session or throughout the day, that is often a clue that you're beginning to burn out. You lose patience for conversations with people could also be a sign you're beginning to burn out. And then, your body also keeps the score, because when you do burn out, it's not just psychological. Your body is also dealing with basically an overload of accumulated stress and strain. And so it will start showing you as well. You wake up in the morning, it's taking more coffee than usual to get yourself to be able to just get going or to get focused. These are all things you should watch out for that are pointing you in that direction.
Fog brain, that's mine.
Yeah.
I just can't, which is a double whammy, because it exacerbates the problem, because now I'm making foggy decisions, and that just increases my level of stress, and that makes me even foggier, and then it's a vicious cycle. I think it's your body's way of saying, okay, I'm going to shut you down. I'm going to just start turning off all the breakers, all the circuit breakers, one at a time, until you just collapse and start, healing. I think that's, the body just doesn't go, okay, Andrew, I'm just going to turn your master switch off. I'm just going to just start giving you little hints.
That's right.
And generally, of course, we tend to plow through it because we're entrepreneurs. We don't live by the same rules. We don't believe the stats are against us. We think that they apply to other people, right? When you begin,
can I add some nuance to that conversation?
Of course,
I didn't know if you wanted to change topics. If you did, I wanted to just add one more piece of nuance to that, if that's okay.
Please, of course.
I want to go back to this emotional piece and this conversation about fear. And I find this personally extremely powerful. And all of my clients who I coach and share this with, it's a game changer. And so the thing I want to bring up for all of your entrepreneurs who are listening to think about is that it's very seductive to believe that if your business is successful, it's going to add something to who you are as a human being. And if your business is not successful, it's going to take something away from who you are as a human being. And for many of us, that fear, which is really predicated, really stands on a mistaken, untrue understanding of who you are. That one will lead you to burnout more than just about anything else. And if you don't ever deal with that, just minding the signs better also won't really ultimately bring you what you want. And there's an incredible movie about this, Mike, that you'll know, that many of your listeners who are younger than you and I are may not know about, called Citizen Kane.
Oh, sure.
Remember the movie Citizen Kane?
Orson Welles, wasn't it? Was that Orson Welles? Yes, yeah.
So it's connected to the true story of a very wealthy man named William Randolph Hearst.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens?
Newspaper icon in the day, publisher.
Correct. And so this movie is kind of based on his life story. And just to give you the arc of it in brief terms so that your listeners will get how important this is that the protagonist of the story in the first scene of the story is on his deathbed as an older man. And he's sitting in this bed with a snow globe in his hand, and he's dying. And right as he dies and drops the snow globe on the ground, his dying words are rosebud, the word rosebud.
Yeah.
And so the rest of the movie tells the story through the lens of a reporter who's trying to figure out, okay, this were the dying words of the most powerful, successful, wealthy man on the planet. What does Rosebud mean? What can we learn from this man's life? That's the premise of the movie.
Yeah.
And they do this retrospective on his life. And the first scene after his death scene is this young man playing in the snow with his dog and his sled, sledding down the hill. And he's so happy. And inside, his parents are having an argument because they just inherited a huge sum of money and they're arguing about what to do with his education. His mom wants to keep him close to home and his dad wants to send him off to the best boarding school in the US. Dad wins the argument. Next thing you see the kid on a train getting shipped off to this boarding school far away from home and he just looks devastated. So the rest of the story is about how he overachieves in school and then he goes and, gets into newspapers, he said, and he acquires his first newspaper and he just starts acquiring everything, Mike. He starts acquiring newspapers. He acquires wealth. He acquires people. But he acquires people like pawns. He acquires people that run his businesses. He acquires people that run his house, and et cetera, et cetera. And you go through this whole story of how he builds all this power and all this wealth. And then you get to the end of his life, at the end of the movie, and there he is, and he's dead. He says Rosebud. And the reporter's like, I don't get it. What the heck is Rosebud? Like, what is the point of all this? And then you don't think you're going to get an answer. In the final scene of the movie, they flash down to the basement of his gaudy, disgustingly gaudy castle. He lives in this castle with all this art. And it's just like this, it's overstated in every way. And these people are just throwing all of his crap into the furnace. And you see this man throw something in the furnace and the camera pans in. And as it pans in closer and closer, you start to see that it's a sled. And then you see that on the bottom of the sled, it says Rosebud. And you realize that the final words and the final thoughts of the most wealthy, successful man in the planet, his final thoughts were about that moment in his life when he was truly happy, when his life wasn't about accumulating anything, when it wasn't about trying to be more of anything. And that is the seduction of success. Entrepreneurs believe, many of us, that if we're successful, it will add something to who we are, and it will not. And if you have a business that fails, it will not take anything away from you that is essential to who you are or your happiness. So if you don't confront that, you're going to, in your own way, live the life of William Randolph Hearst. You're going to sacrifice things that you will likely regret. So this thing about burnout is a much bigger topic, in my opinion, that goes down into the heart of the soul of a human being and their relationship with himself. And if you approach it from there first, the rest of it is so much easier to learn, so much easier to implement. So I just wanted to make that one point as a piece of leverage for the listeners.
Yeah, there's a lot of takeaways from that that we could unpack. One of them to me is there is, when it comes to entrepreneurship and building a business, there is no so-called destination. We accumulate things, we accumulate, monetary things, we accumulate experiences, we accumulate failures, we accumulate successes, we accumulate relationships. But to me, there is no finish line. To me, it's where we equate our worth as a human in things we can hang on a wall. To me, it's really more about the journey. The journey is a reflection of the human, not so much the destination. Because horrible people reach destinations. They accomplish goals. That is not a reflection on their character. It is a reflection of their determination and their ability to play the game. To me, I think if you want to know what a person's really made out of, better or worse, look at the journey. Look at not the accolades on the wall, not the trophies, not the accumulation of dead animals on your wall, all that stuff. Like you can just vision in that rich man's house at the end days. To me, it's all about the journey. One of your core ideas is that a startup can only grow as fast as the founder grows, which I completely believe. I certainly know the opposite is true. I can take a company down to my level. What does that actually mean? And I think I've kind of done that before. What does that actually mean in practice? Put that into practical terms for me.
Yeah. So first, let's talk about what the word grow means in that context, because many people hear grow and they think in one dimension only, which is revenue. And so although in any particular example, revenue might be the part of the business that's impacted by a lack of founder growth, it's not necessarily the one or the only one. So, the other things that might stall other than revenue in terms of a company's growth is you know maybe the level of impact that the product makes relative to what the founder dreamed possible. Maybe it has to do with the impact working on the company has on its employees and partners is not what you want. It's, in fact, it's taking something away from them instead of providing. It takes more away from them than it provides to them. But what the statement is pointing to is that the organizations move from the top down most of the time in most cases. When the founder's growth personally or professionally is delayed, it'll show up in the business. And when the founder gets unlocked in some way, it'll show up in the business. And that even includes their ability to recruit and hire people who are just exactly right for what the company needs. Sometimes those people will bring an unlock to the business, which if the founder can't retain them, if the founder can't find them, if the founder, because there's something stuck there, once again, the company will suffer. So the founder's growth is like the flywheel that turns all the gears of the business. So when that gets stuck, the company will reflect it in some way. That's what that statement is about. So it's one of the greatest levers the founder has is their own personal and professional growth for growing an incredible business.
In your work with founders, where do you most often see the leadership gap appear as a company begins to scale? Is there a moment of like, okay, this is it? It's just like they talk in marriage, the 7-year mark, 7-year itch, as they call it. A lot of marriages are challenged at 7 years. Is there a 7-year equivalent to scaling a business and scaling the people that are running the business?
First off, I think to answer this question in a useful way, it's important to differentiate between companies that are on that venture track going for a unicorn or decacorn or greater outcome, and then bootstrap, maybe solopreneurships that grow into 5-10 person companies that are going for $5 or $10 million of revenue. It's really, really, really different. So I want to speak to it in both contexts because I think your audience covers both.
Yeah.
When a venture-backed startup starts to scale, that usually happens when they've really established their product market fit and they've also demonstrated that their go-to-market plan is working. They're acquiring customers repeatably and at a profitable rate of customer acquisition. And so really all they need is to throw gas on that fire and really start moving faster. And so they're going to scale, and they're going to scale their revenue sometimes double, triple, or faster now with AI in the mix. It can go even faster. So what tends to happen is a phenomenon in, let's just say the people or personnel aspect of the business of what got you here won't get you there. So many times at the beginning of a business, you're hiring Swiss Army knives. And what I mean by that is you're hiring people who have to wear a lot of hats because the revenue's short. And you don't have enough money to put a person in every possible role the company will need 5 years from now. Right. So you hire someone who can cover 5 things. But now that you need to scale, that person may not be able to level up to being a C-level executive in the place where you need them. They may not have the ability in the amount of time you have to get them there. So the challenge there, and where I think the founder's skill set doesn't really prepare them for this, is that founders are generally speaking super high-performing individual contributors in their past who have now leapfrogged into a position of having to lead large teams of people, and that skill set doesn't translate. So where they often get stuck is they have to be able to just look, I'm going to say this like surgically, they have to be able to look in a way that's non-emotional and say, given the amount of time I have, can this person get there or not? And sometimes you just have to say, no, they won't get there, so I need to hire over them. And it's super painful for everybody because the people who got you here have expectations that they're going to be a part of this ride at the highest levels, and they may not have what you need. So it's really hard. It's heartbreaking. So you have to be able to look at it dispassionately, but also deal with it compassionately. And so that's a skill set they have to build on their scaling journey where I say they often get stuck. They try to make it work because they're loyal. and they want to help the person get there. But in honesty, there's not enough time for the person to cross the gap. So that's what I think often happens at that point. Also, hiring people. So that's one of two things. The second thing is trust. So at the point at which you're going to scale, this is the point at which if you can't learn how to hire and set up people who are better than you at their very deep but narrow role and trust them, you're going to get stuck, because the speed at which you start to move when you're a scaling venture-backed startup and the number of moving parts is going to outpace your capacity to have your fingers in every single thing.
Sure.
And if you undercut someone who has the chops to be a C-suite executive in your company by getting in their business because you don't know how to trust them or something like that, you're also going to lose them. So those are the two big pain points there for venture-backed startups. Now, for sort of a bootleg company that's growing from, let's say, maybe its first million to 2 million. So they're going to double from 1 to 2 million, but they're, a small and mighty team of 5 people or whatever, and they're not trying to take on capital and hit these crazy goals. It's different. Usually for that founder, okay, what it's about is process. It's that the founder has backstopped technical and operational debt, by which I mean, as you're building your company, it would be great if you slowed down at some point and say, hey, let's turn what we just did into a standard operating procedure. Let's document it. Let's put it in a reliable place. Let's train everyone who comes on board. And this is the procedure, and here's where to find it, and da-da-da. So you don't do that. So it becomes sort of like institutional knowledge in the brains of people. And some people one person has all of it. That's the founders. Then the other people have little parts of it. So now that you're trying to grow and bring on more people, you don't have a good way to operationalize what has made you successful. So now you have all this debt, you have operational debt you have to clean up. So where they get stuck is they don't understand the principle of slow down in order to speed up. First, slow down and pay the operational and technical debt. Create the processes, create the procedures, create the foundation in that tier of your organization that will support bringing on people and having them quickly succeed. You have to slow down to do that. If you slow down to do that, as you start adding to your headcount, you can do it way faster with less customer upset, fewer breakdowns, with those kinds of things. So that's a different challenge on the side of that kind of company. That's my nuanced answer to your question.
Going back to when you kind of transitioned from running companies for people, kind of gun for hire, to being a coach and working with the thousands of people you've ultimately worked with, I would assume your journey into entrepreneurship was a little bit different because than most a typical entrepreneur. Because, like in my case, I was 32 years old when I started my company. I had zero business experience. I'd worked for companies, but I did not run companies. So the universe, the business gods tend to train you by first hitting you with a 2x4 in the face. It's like, totally. Wake up, Mike. We got your attention now. Did you have your 2x4 in the face moment when you realized that maybe all the experience you had and all the witnessing of positive business moves, negative business moves, you had a lot of perspective. You were in the driver's seat for quite some time when you left to start your own business. Did anything surprise you? Were there some challenges that you just didn't see coming, the 2x4 to the face kind of thing, or were you prepared for all that?
So this is I guess I said this is my third business. So I think I had 2x4s to the face on a weekly basis in my first business. That business had three major flaws. Number one, it wasn't a purpose-driven business. And so what it wound up being about for me was just don't fail. And that is a really miserable way to go through life. Number two, the margins were terrible. And so it was a lot of work.
Work hard for not a lot, right?
Exactly. I never really made any money in that business. In fact, by the end, I had lost a lot of money. And so I learned a lot of lessons a hard way about margins. I learned a lot of lessons about how to capitalize a business that doesn't take on capital through growth and how not to do it. I mostly learned that by doing it all wrong in every way I possibly could. So I had those 2x4 moments in the first business. But in this business, the 2x4 moment that I had, I wasn't expecting, was I love selling. I love people. I love talking to people. And I've always been very strong in sales. I mean, like super strong. It's never been a difficult thing for me to do once I really understood how to sell as a service. Literally to have my sales motions provide a lot of value, whether people bought with me or not. What I didn't expect was that I would tire of constantly hunting through network marketing, which is how I built this business. So when I had to jump into when I wanted to have the business stop being so dependent on me hunting all the time and try to set up like outbound marketing motions, content leadership, and things like that, I was so bad at that. And I was so unskilled at that I felt like I was trying to eat an elephant. I hated a lot of the content I was putting out. It was super painful. And most of it didn't produce anything. And I was super frustrated by that. And I just felt stuck, like, oh my God, I'm either going to have to live the rest of my life like asking people for referrals like a real estate agent, which I don't want to do, or I don't know what I tried outsourcing it and nothing was working. And I think the real, the real breakthrough I had, and this is going to apply to a lot of service-based business, but it's not going to apply to every business listening. So you'll unfortunately have to try to find your own lesson in this. But what I found to be the case was when I let go of trying to make marketing do this thing called get me out of the networking business, and I started thinking about marketing as my opportunity to put content out in the world that I was proud of, that had some chance of maybe uplifting somebody while simultaneously reflecting who I am and what I do, everything clicked. And it wasn't that I started getting a lot of inbound from marketing. I mean, I have had some. What it was something just like unlocked in the universe. It's like all of my clients who I'd had for years, all of a sudden started thinking of people to introduce me to, which they had known all this time, and now they did. And at the same time, when those people who I was being introduced to through my market went and vetted me out in the world on social media and LinkedIn, things like that, my website, because of all the work I had been doing to learn, how do I say who I am in a way that really reflects my heart and it isn't like the right way to say it to get someone to buy me? How do I put a post on LinkedIn that actually means something to me and isn't designed to try to get someone to call me? When I learned how to do all that, when people would go and vet me, they would be like, oh, I get this guy. I feel this guy. Like, I want to talk to this guy. This guy is the guy I'm looking for, or he's not. And then I'm not talking to people who shouldn't talk to me, right? And so the lesson, the 2x4 brick I learned in this business was, for a service-based business like mine that is very much about relationships, because when I coach people, it's like we get married. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, like, I fall in love with these people and they fall in love with me. And I know about their marriages. I know about their kids. I know about every skeleton in their closet. I know about their business. I know about everything. And we talk about everything. It is like a beautiful marriage, right? And so people are not going to buy that service for what I charge for it because of a LinkedIn post.
Right.
They're not going to. And so that was the 2x4 moment for me in this business.
You know, several years ago, we woke up one day and just got tired of the sound of our own voice and changed our marketing strategy. Our marketing strategies used to be just obnoxiously cringeworthy. We were, we're the best, everyone else sucks, chest thumping, just in your face. We would exhibit at trade shows and we would put waterfalls and magicians and shtick. We were high-tech carnies, and
cool.
And it was just, it was awful. Winning all these bogus awards, that you kind of pay to win, and it's terrible. and one day we just said, okay, stop the madness. This is crazy, and we switched over to a different type of quote unquote marketing, which I like to refer to as conscious marketing, where it's authority based, it's value based. So we made a decision that anytime I was in front of a lectern or a camera or a microphone or a word processor, there's a word we don't use so much anymore, but a word processor, it's going to be to create valuable content, not commercial content. And
Yeah.
we started building authority in our space, and then when you build authority, you become, and I hate this word because it's been hijacked by so many, but you become an influencer. And it comes from something I learned. I'm in the electronics assembly industry, and we use certain chemicals in our process. So I know a little bit about chemicals, not a lot. But there's a particular rule in chemistry called the Hansen's law of solubility. And it is that like attracts like. So in the chemical context, a certain type of chemical, a polar chemical, which means a chemical soluble in water, will attract other water-soluble residue species. Non-polar will attract other non-polar residues. So like attracts like. And I do believe that we can take the like attracts like, Hansen's law of solubility, and apply it to business or anything for that matter. That when we put out high-level content, high-value content, without the sole motivation to, put a notch on our belt and a trophy on our wall by having another customer, we attract a different type of customer, a much higher octave customer who's looking for a solution to a problem and looking to partner with somebody to find a remedy for what ails them. And all of a sudden, our sales went from exceptionally transactional to relational. And that is a game changer, Andrew. It was a total game changer. We simply attract what we put out. So to your earlier point, if you're trying to post, the equivalent of a marriage therapist, a family counselor, a psychologist, a business coach, which you play all those roles in your job, a LinkedIn ad is going to attract people who want to, save their business off a little rectangular set of pixels. Really? I mean, that's, they might as well look in the yellow pages, if there even are yellow pages anymore, for something.
I was going to say, how many of your listeners know what the heck you just said?
I know, right? Oh, that's what we use as a book stop. Yeah, or a doorstop. That's what we use as a doorstop. Yeah, now we don't even have those anymore. But I do think that we attract what we put out. And speaking of that, a lot of business founders are really good at what they do. They have a particular skill set. They can design a product. They can perform a service better than anyone. They're very gifted in that. And people that start businesses, that they tend to have kind of a magnetic personality. They tend to attract people. Maybe not the best, not the worst, but they do attract people. People like to be around people that they perceive to be successful. And but they may not have any leadership qualities. So they are attracting people and then turning them off, through the lack of leadership qualities. What are some of the leadership skills founders really need to develop if they want their business to grow beyond them? They've already got the technical acumen down, or the artistry acumen down, whatever it is they're doing. How do they work on leadership? Where do they get started? What can they do to help make that part of their missing tool in the toolbox better?
Yeah. So this is a topic I think you and I could probably talk back and forth about for at least an hour.
Episode
it's so
4.
Rich.
Yes, we'll do a multi-part.
So I'm going to do my best to turn this into Cliff Notes, which people today now call the TLDR, right? So.
I don't know that one. I feel like I'm an old man now. What's TLDR?
TLDR is an acronym for too long, didn't read. In other words, it's a summary, an executive summary, or what you and I used to call Cliff Notes. It's now called the TLDR. Okay.
TLDR. I'm going to use that and see if I sit on some boards of directors. And we do a lot of email stuff and death by meeting. I will throw that out there and see if anyone knows.
Great. Okay, so number one thing is you have to reframe your fundamental perspective on your business from how do I make X happen to how do I empower someone else to make X happen. That's a fundamental shift you have to make in your thinking and your orientation in your business, because it's not to be a coach of a team is such a different skill set than to be the star player. Who knows if Michael Jordan would make a great coach? I mean, maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. Nobody knows. He's never been an NBA coach, but his skill set in being a player doesn't automatically translate to being a coach.
Yeah.
So you have to shift that mindset. Number 2, study and learn the difference between leadership and management. Super important distinction, and when to apply each. And to say it as briefly as I can, leadership is that domain in which what you're doing essentially is seeing the possibility or opportunity in some situation, in some human being, in their performance, in the market, whatever, that isn't yet realized. So it's that place you go where you see something possible that isn't real yet. And you're the person who is putting words around that and speaking about it and calling it forth, and then having other people start to see it. They get inspired by it. Now they get oriented around it. That fundamental process is one of the key aspects of leadership. Okay. Also, going first is another key aspect of leadership. Demonstrating whatever it is, demonstrating hard work, demonstrating authenticity, demonstrating being responsible. So going first. So those are 2 key aspects of leadership. Management is very different. Management is about the oversight of systems, processes, and results so that you can ensure that the right actions are being taken at the right time and that the expected correct results are happening. And when that's not happening, you are managing all the parts of that system so that the repeatability, the reliability of your business processes are happening. So that's from individual people's performance to all the tools they use and so on and so forth. And that's management. You really need to understand the difference between leadership and management and when to apply them, and which one you should be in and which one you shouldn't be in terms of your personal activity at each stage of your company. So that's a whole domain. Okay, so that's 1 and 2. And then number 3, I will say, is influence. And this one is interesting because I don't really know very many. I do know one or 2, but I don't know very many founders who have gotten the opportunity to become a founder who aren't at least intuitively strong at influencing people, as you were saying earlier. But mostly it's what we would call unconscious competence. So it's something that they can do, but they actually don't know how they do it. And therefore, because they don't know how it works, they don't know how they do it, they can't apply it in different contextual domains. Like maybe they're great with sales, but they don't know how to apply it in influencing someone to perform and take actions they need to take when the person's not doing it, who works for them. And so they have to learn the skill set and the frameworks that allow you to be influential. And in the way that I use the term, just so that we're all on the same page, I use influence in a purely positive sense. So I mean altering the way another person thinks and acts, but doing it in a way that is transparent and humane and leads to a win-win outcome. Okay, right. So we use influence to mean a lot of things, including, the Russians tried to influence the US election. So that's a nefarious or a negative use of the term. I'm excluding all that. I'm just talking about win-win situations, okay? So to be really great at influence, you have to develop empathy. You will never, ever be a master of influence if you don't have empathy. Why? Because if you don't understand how somebody else sees and experiences the situations you're talking about, you have no idea of what's in their way of doing what it is you need them to do. You can only see half of the cup. So if I'm holding up a cup and you're there and I'm here and the cup is green on my side and blue on your side, and I say, what color is the cup? And you keep saying blue. I'm like, no, it's green. Why can't you see it's green? It's green. It's obviously green, right? And that conversation's not going anywhere. So you have to be able to see what someone else's view and experience of the world is to be effective at influencing them. So those are the top 3 things I would say, right? Is that whole thing about shifting your mindset from producing results to producing results through others. Number 2, leadership and management and what those domains are, how they work, and then when you should be in them and not. And number 3, influence. How do you influence people? So those are the top 3 things on my list. What about you? What's on your list?
Oh my God. That would be a whole episode. That would be an entire episode right there. We'll have to do this again. I don't talk to too many of guests that, where we leave more on the table than when we started, but there's so many things on the table. I'd love to do this again. Go back in time, Andrew, to when you brought your young newborn daughter to work. How did you define success at that time, and how do you define it today?
At that time, I defined success as not failing, plus having enough money to support my family without going into debt.
Yep.
Real simple.
Very practical.
That was it. Yep. Today, I differentiate success and fulfillment. They're different phenomena, but they often travel together, but not always. It is possible to have success without fulfillment. And so today, when I talk about success, I talk about it as successfully accomplishing that which you find deeply fulfilling, whatever that may be for a person. And so that is a huge shift from my point of view from when I was 25 and I launched my first business in 1998. I was 26, sorry, and how I see it today, which is now I'm 53, 27 years later. You know, I have sacrificed enough in my relationship with my family and my health, and seen enough of my friends die young to get that the most precious two things we really have are time and health. And you want to make the most of those. And a key aspect of your health, in addition to your physical health, is your fulfillment in life, your joy in life. And so for me now, success is being successful at that which you find fulfilling. All of it, all the different domains of life.
Yeah. I sometimes am guilty of assuming everyone thinks the way I do. And so my benchmark for judging someone is like, how much like me do they think, right? And I work on that, and I realize that's not a very healthy way to look at other people. But I know me. That's my anchor point is me. It's like, okay, how different are they from me? Is it better different? Is it worse different? I get very judgy. I do keep my ego locked up in a cellar, but occasionally it comes out to play. In my case, I'm a very optimistic person. If the glass is half empty, not only will I say, well, it's half full, I'll say, look at the opportunity. Look at how much it has to fill. I mean, this is great, right? If my glass was full, I couldn't put any more, whatever I'm collecting in it, right? So I am a very, very optimistic person. And building my company was extremely hard, as you know. It's extremely hard. No part of it is easy. Yet I found joy even in the miserable stuff. To me, it was a challenge. It was like, okay, wow, this sucks, but what's right about it? What's right about it? There's something right about everything that happens. And even if you have to like dig really deep to find a little glimmer of right. And, the one right thing is I get to learn. Wow, I'll never do this again. Yeah. Now it's branded in me. Like, like put your hand in a fire one time, you are never getting near a fire again. And that's something right. So to me, I think one of the superpowers I had, as difficult as building my business has been over 34 years, still going. I haven't killed it yet, although I think I've tried. I have retained hope and joy throughout the process. I am in love with the process, with the journey of building a business. Not every part of it, just like marriage. I love my wife, obviously. 44 years. I could have killed 2 men and been out by now, and I'm still married, right? So, I mean, it's yeah. See, she doesn't watch the show, so I can easily say that and get away with it.
That's hysterical.
But not every day was bliss, right? Some days were, super sucked, for her too. But overall, I find joy in in the journey of life, the journey of building a business, the journey of forming relationships, the journey of doing these shows, meeting cool people like yourself. I just, to me, that fulfills me. And as corny as this is as hallmark card as this is, the saying is true, and that is that, you know, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And you know, it's a little Pollyannish, but there's something there. So I think it's an important thing for business leaders, entrepreneurs, to realize that the journey is where the richness is, not the destination. I mean, you may get to a destination, you may have an exit, whatever your version of, you know, destination success is. But to me, the takeaway is everything you've learned along the way, everyone you've met along the way, every experience you've had, plus or minus, along the way. That's where the richness is in entrepreneurship. And it makes the effort and the sleepless nights and the blood, sweat, and tears, quite literally, 100% worth it. We would do it again. And it's like childbirth. You know, I don't think any woman would go, I love the whole part of pushing and whatever. You know, it's like, no, they didn't. They loved the process. They loved the outcome. They loved the journey of the whole thing, minus a few specific things. So that's kind of a corny analogy, but still, I do think if anyone is stuck, if anyone is like, I think I'm done, I can't handle anymore, I'm just ready to throw in the towel, you know, this just isn't great. Like your first business or one of your businesses where you were working really hard, but you weren't really making any money, right? You're just hamster wheeling your way through it. I think if someone's in that type of position, it's so important to reach out. I've got a mentor, you know, she doesn't like to be called a business coach, and she's a little bit more like Yoda. She's like her advice is so counterintuitive that it's so easy to go, are you nuts? And I think I've even said that to her. I pay her, so I figure I can say that to her. Are you nuts? That's crazy. That's the craziest thing I ever heard. But it turned out to be the most sage advice I ever heard. So I think that advice to my audience, to anyone who's either contemplating starting a business or if they've already done it and they're just ready to, you know, walk out the door and go to plan B or C or D, reach out to someone like Andrew. Reach out to someone that can help you see the forest from the trees, has a little bit more perspective. You're so deep into it right now. I can guarantee I've been there. You're so deep into it, you can't see a way out. You're in a hedge maze. And, you know, you have 12-foot ivy walls all the way around you. And a therapist, a business coach, an Andrew Poles or someone like that is really the person operating the drone looking down on that hedge maze, and they can see perspective. They can see, you know, you're just 2 right turns away from the prize, right? It's not hopeless, and it's not like the ending scene of The Shining where, you know, Jack Nicholson's son. I always mix up the golfer and the actor. Nicholson. Jack Nicholson is, you know, the last scene, Stanley Kubrick's last scene is a dead, frozen Jack Nicholson in the hedge maze. Couldn't find his way out. It's not that. So anyway, that's a long mantra to kind of wrap up this episode. But I do think that people like yourself, Andrew, who have perspective, who've been in the trenches, who's been in the hedge maze, and worked with thousands of other people, helping them find their way out of that maze and into some level of growth and insight, is such a value. We think we know it all as entrepreneurs. We don't. And seek out help. I think that really helps. It helped me. It saved my business, frankly. I think I'm a smart guy. Technically, I've got a very strong technical acumen. I didn't know anything about running a business, and it showed. And there's no harm in getting help, right? So I encourage my audience to reach out to Andrew or someone that they, you know, maybe they're referred to, someone they trust, and just get a little second bit of advice, a little bit of perspective on your business. Andrew Poles, Thank you so much for being my guest today. And for my audience who wants to get information on Andrew's company, if you're watching this on YouTube, look down here where it says see more, and the URL to Andrew's company will be there. And if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, of course, look at the podcast app show notes, and information on Andrew's company will be there as well. Andrew, any parting words?
No, Mike, well, yes. Also, your show is a lighthouse for people who are struggling with this incredible journey of entrepreneurship. So I also appreciate the work it takes to have a podcast and put this kind of content out in the world. So thank you for that work you do. Entrepreneurs need every ounce of light and support they can get. So I want to also appreciate the work you do in helping them find their way through the maze. And it was an honor to be your guest.
Well, it was an honor to have you on. Thanks for sharing your wisdom and your sage advice and your journey with me and my audience. It's inspirational, and I wish you continued success, Andrew.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Okay, before we wrap up, here are some final thoughts. One of the themes that really stands out with my discussion with Andrew is that entrepreneurship is not just about building product, finding customers, or raising capital. It's also about building yourself. As a company grows, the founder has to grow with it. The skills that get a business off the ground are often very different from the skills required to lead a team, manage complexity, and guide an organization as it scales. What I appreciate about Andrew's perspective is the reminder that leadership development is not something that happens automatically. It requires intention, reflection, and sometimes the willingness to step back and rethink how we show up as leaders. For entrepreneurs listening or watching today, especially those who are in the middle of that growth journey, the message is clear. The success of your business is closely tied to your own growth as a leader. Investing in that growth may be one of the most important decisions you make. Now, that's a wrap. Thanks for being part of our Reluctant Entrepreneur family. We've been very busy recording future episodes with fascinating guests, so be sure to subscribe and get notified when new episodes drop. And one personal favor, if you're watching this on YouTube, consider giving us a like and subscribe. Those 2 simple clicks really help us expand our reach. If you're an entrepreneur or know someone who would make a terrific guest, we'd love to hear from you. Visit reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com to apply or recommend a guest. And of course, a very quick shameless plug. If you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup, From Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon, and as an audiobook on Audible and Amazon. And to everyone listening or watching, if you find yourself stepping into entrepreneurship, whether by choice or by circumstance, remember this: sometimes the path we never planned becomes the journey we were meant to take. Thanks again for being here. I really appreciate it. I'll see you again soon.